You stand on the deck of a small wooden fishing boat, a dory with peeling green paint, and a single mast that rises like a quiet thought into the pale air. The deck beneath your boots is damp and cool, the planks slightly springy with years of salt and sun. It is the very beginning of morning, that time when the sky is not yet blue, but a soft, hesitant grey, the colour of worn flannel. The light seems to seep upward from the sea itself, a slow diffusion that makes everything look flat and calm. You can feel the moisture in the air settle on your face, tiny cool dots that never quite become a mist but promise one later. The world is hushed, so hushed that when you shift your weight, the boards give a small muted creak that travels nowhere, swallowed instantly by the vast, open quiet. You look down at your hands, at the familiar calluses on your palms and the small scar on your thumb from a hook years ago. Those hands know this boat, know every line and knot. You reach for the coiled rope resting on the stern seat, its fibers rough and slightly stiff with dried salt. You lift it, feeling its weight, and let it hang from your hand for a moment before laying it across your lap as you sit on the thwart. The rope is a 3-strand twist, its color a faded hemp brown, and you run your thumb along its length, checking for any frayed spots. There are none. You set it down beside the creel basket, a round, slatted basket made of thin wooden strips that have gone silvery with age, and you place the rope in a neat coil next to it. Everything has its place, and every small action feels unhurried, as if morning itself has given you permission to move slowly. Next to the creel basket sits the bait box, a wooden box with a hinged lid and a smell that rises the moment you lift the corner. Inside, chopped herring lies in a jumble of silver skin and pinkish flesh, the pieces glistening with their own oil. The scent is sharp and briny, a clean smell of the sea, and you breathe it in as you check that the lid fits tightly. You close it and wipe your fingers on a rag tucked under the seat, a rag that has wiped 1,000 such tasks. Your movements are deliberate, each one a small ritual that stitches the morning together. The boat rocks ever so slightly with your shifting weight, a motion so gentle it is more a suggestion than a movement, a slow sway that rocks the lantern hanging from the mast on its hook. The lantern is not lit now. Its glass is cool and clear, and a single drop of condensation trembles on the inside of the chimney. You turn your gaze to the oars, lying along the side benches, their blades painted a faded white that shows the wood grain beneath. The handles are smooth from years of grip, polished to a soft brown that feels almost warm to the touch even in this cool air. You lift one, balancing it across your palms, feeling its length and weight, and slide it into the oarlock, a U-shaped metal notch that holds it in place. The metal gives a tiny, oiled squeak, then settles. The other oar you place ready but not yet set, its blade resting on the gunwale. All around you, the water is a sheet of dark slate, so still that the boat seems to float on a mirror, the hull's reflection a deep, wavering green shape that stretches down into the dark. You can see the faint outline of the keel, a straight line that points to the shore behind you, though soon that shore will be lost. You stand again and move to the bow, where the painter line is tied to a cleat on the wharf. The wharf is a low, grey structure of weathered timber, its pilings thick with barnacles and dark seaweed that hangs in wet, glistening fronds. The tide is out just enough that you can smell the damp, muddy scent of the intertidal zone, a mix of salt and organic richness. You untie the line with a few simple tugs, the knot coming loose easily because you tied it that way, and you coil the wet end on the deck. The boat immediately feels looser, more alive, as if it has taken a quiet breath. You take up the oars now, seating yourself on the middle thwart, your back to the shore, and you push away from the wharf with one oar blade pressed against a piling. The boat slides backward with a slow, liquid grace, and the wharf begins to shrink, its planks and the small shed at its end diminishing into the grey. You dip the oars into the water, the blades slicing through the surface with a soft, clean sound that repeats with every stroke. The sound is not a splash, but a gentle plunge, followed by the low creak of the oarlocks as you pull, then a quiet drip as the blades rise and swing forward. This rhythm, plunge and creak and drip, settles into a steady pace that matches your breathing. You do not row hard, you row just enough to move the dory forward, your muscles working in a slow, easy cycle. The mist on your face increases, and when you glance over your shoulder, you see that the shoreline is already softening, the dark rocks and the sparse, wind-bent spruce trees blurring at their edges. The fog is beginning to gather, not as a solid wall, but as thin, wandering ribbons that drift just above the surface of the sea, like long strips of gauze unwinding from the land. You keep rowing, and with each stroke the light changes, the grey of the sky paling into a luminous pearl that has no single source. The sun is somewhere behind the high overcast, a diffuse presence that casts no shadow. The water, which was dark slate, now takes on a silvery sheen, and the oar blades, when they enter the water, seem to glow a soft, submerged white. You watch the ripples spread from each stroke, perfect concentric circles that widen and flatten and disappear. The only other motion on the water is the occasional dip of a seabird, a small black guillemot perhaps, that appears out of the mist, bobs once and then vanishes again with a quiet, peeping call. That call is the only sound besides your own oars and the gentle lap of water against the hull, a tiny, repetitive kissing sound that never stops. The boat is a simple, sturdy thing built for these waters. Its green paint is the color of old copper, flaking in places to show the grey wood underneath. Inside, the ribs of the hull curve up like the skeleton of some gentle whale, and between the ribs, the planking is tight and true. A small pool of water, no bigger than your hand, is collected near the stern, where a tiny leak lets the sea seep in, and it trembles with the boat's motion, a miniature inland sea that reflects the grey sky. You watch it for a moment, then return your gaze to the oars. The rhythm is hypnotic, each stroke a small, complete act. You feel the slight resistance of the water, the give of the wood, the cool air on your neck. The wool sweater you wear is thick and heavy, a knit of cream-colored wool with a high collar that brushes your jaw. It smells faintly of lanolin and wood smoke, a comforting homespun smell that belongs to this boat and this life. The fog ribbons grow thicker and more frequent, no longer just drifting, but beginning to merge. To your left, a long, low bank of fog forms, its top edge rolling slowly forward like a wave that will never break. You pause in your rowing, letting the oars rest, and watch it come. The air inside it feels different, cooler and denser, and when it reaches you, the world on that side simply ceases to exist. The sea, the sky, the distant shore all become a soft, uniform white. The transition is so smooth that you do not feel the boundary. One moment you can see, the next you cannot. You are now rowing through a corridor of clear water, with fog on one side and thinning haze on the other. It is a strange and peaceful sensation, like moving through a room where the walls are made of cloud. You take up the oars again, but your strokes are even slower now, just enough to keep the boat oriented. The oarlocks creak with a sound like a sleepy bird, and the drip from the blade seems louder in the muffled air. The sound does not echo. It is immediately absorbed, deadened by the fog's soft weight. You listen to the quiet, a quiet so deep it has its own texture, like the inside of a wool blanket. In that quiet, you can hear your own breathing, the soft rustle of your sweater when you move, the tiny tick of a loose nail in the mast step. All these sounds are small and intimate, the private music of a boat alone on the sea. You ship the oars, pulling them in and laying them along the benches, their drips forming a line of dark spots on the wood. The boat continues to glide, carried by its own momentum, and you sit still, letting the drift take you. The fog now encloses you completely on all sides, a soft, featureless cocoon. You can see the surface of the water near the boat, its texture like heavy silk, a deep grey-green that moves in long, slow swells. The swells are barely perceptible, just a gentle lifting and settling, as if the sea is breathing in its sleep. You rest your hands on your knees and let the motion carry you, a motion so faint you might not notice it if you were not paying attention. Your mind, which is accustomed to the constant small tasks of fishing, now finds itself with nothing to do but observe, and it does so with a kind of drowsy attention. You look over the side and watch the water. a small piece of kelp, a long brown strap with a bulbous end, drifts past, its fronds waving lazily in the current. It moves so slowly that it seems to take a full minute to travel the length of the boat. You follow it with your eyes until it fades into the fog. Then another piece comes, and another, a scattered procession of sea wrack heading somewhere unknown. The kelp has a smell that rises from the water, a clean iodine tang that mingles with the general saltiness and the faint hint of your own bait box. You close your eyes for a moment, and the world becomes entirely auditory and tactile. The slow rock of the boat, the tiny tap of the mast against its partner, the cool pressure of the wood seat against your thighs, the soft weight of your sweater. There is no hurry, no need to be anywhere, no thought of time except the slow turning of the light. When you open your eyes again, the fog has shifted slightly, the grey now a shade lighter, almost silver. You can see the bow of the boat more clearly, its sharp, curved shape and the small rust stain around the metal ring where the painter is tied. The anchor, a small Danforth with flukes like flat hands, rests in the bow, its chain coiled neatly beside it. The chain is cold to the touch, each link a tiny oval of dark iron, and you run a finger over them, feeling the gritty texture of rust and dried mud. There is a slight breeze now, the first you have felt, and it moves the fog in slow, rolling billows, opening a brief window through which you glimpse the pale disk of the sun, high and small and without heat. Then the window closes and the world is white again. You reach for the tin canteen that hangs on a hook near the mast. It is an old canteen, dented on one side, its metal cool and smooth. You unscrew the cap and take a small sip of water. The water tastes of the tin, a faintly metallic, flat taste that is nonetheless refreshing. You hold it in your mouth for a moment before swallowing, feeling the coolness travel down your throat. The simple act of drinking seems significant here, a small anchor to the real world. You replace the cap carefully, the threads turning with the tiny, gritty sound, and hang the canteen back. The boat drifts on, and you notice that the small pool of water in the stern has grown slightly, its trembling surface now catching a faint, diffuse light from above. You make no move to bail it. It is so small, just a cupful, and there is no urgency in you at all. The fog is not silent, you realize. There is a constant, very low, very far-off sound, a kind of deep hum that might be the ocean's own note or the distant, muffled crash of waves on some unseen headland. It is a sound so faint that you can only hear it when you stop thinking, a sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, a bass line beneath all other sounds. Above it, the boat's own noises float, the creak of the mast as it sways in its step, the gentle slap of a small wavelet against the hull, the rustle of the tarpaulin folded in the stern. Each sound is distinct and separate, with long silences between them, silences filled only by that low, planetary hum. You let your head rest back against the mast and look up, seeing the fog swirl slowly above you, its patterns shifting in a slow, hypnotic dance. Your thoughts wander, but not far. They stay with the immediate, the feel of the rope's end tickling your ankle, the slight chill on your cheeks, the way the fog mutes the color of your own hand so that it looks like a hand in an old photograph. You think about the bait box and whether you should rebait the hooks even though you will not fish now. The thought passes without demanding action. You think about the shore you left behind, now lost in the mist, its low rocky headland and the small cluster of wooden houses painted in faded reds and whites, their windows dark in the early morning. You picture them in your mind, the gravel path, the wooden flake with its drying code, the smell of wood smoke that would be rising from chimneys. But the picture has no pull on you. It is just a quiet image, as calm and distant as a painting on a wall. The boat continues its slow, aimless drift, and you let yourself become a part of it, not a separate consciousness, but just another element of the scene. Your body settles into the rhythm of the sea, the long, slow lift and fall that seems to come from some deep, ancient clock. You breathe in time with it, in as the boat rises, out as it falls. The fog wraps around you, cool and damp and completely, utterly peaceful. There is no before, no after, only this long suspended moment of grey light and quiet water. The oarlocks gleam faintly with moisture. The coiled rope has a single strand that has come loose and points towards the bow. The lantern sways with a tiny, rhythmic tick. All these things are present and still, a frozen tableau that nonetheless moves at the pace of the sea. A seabird calls again, much closer this time, a series of 3 soft notes that sound like a question. You look up and see nothing, but you hear the whistle of its wings as it passes overhead, a rapid, soft whoosh that fades quickly. Then silence returns, deeper than before. You notice that the fog has grown a little warmer, or perhaps it is your own body heat trapped by the wool sweater. In any case, the chill is less noticeable now, replaced by a comfortable coolness that feels like a damp cloth on a mild day. You uncurl your fingers, which you had not realized you were holding in a loose fist, and stretch them flat on your thighs. The small movements of your body feel good, tiny stretches that release invisible tensions you did not know you were carrying. The water near the boat has changed color again, now a deep, opaque jade that speaks of greater depth below. You cannot see into it. It is like looking at polished stone. The kelp pieces have stopped appearing, and the sea is empty of any flotsam, just a clean, smooth expanse of water that meets the fog at a soft, indistinct line. That line, where water becomes mist, is a place of transition that you watch for many minutes, seeing how it breathes, expanding and contracting by a few inches with each swell. It is like watching a sleeping creature, its flank rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. Your own eyelids feel heavy, but you do not sleep. You simply rest, suspended in a state that is halfway between waking and dreaming. You recall, without any sharpness, the task of checking the net. It lies in a heap on the forward bench, a tangle of brown mesh with small lead weights along one edge, and cork floats along the other. You could sort it, you think, but you don't move. The thought is enough. The net will still be there later, in an hour, in a day, whenever the fog lifts. There is no rush. The boat itself seems to agree. Its every creak a vote for stillness. You feel the mast with your shoulder, the wood smooth and round, and you lean into it slightly, letting it take some of your weight. The fog holds you in its soft grey hand, and you are perfectly content to be held. A tiny drop of water, condensed from the fog on a day, slides down the metal and hangs for a second at the turnbuckle before falling onto the deck with a sound so small it is almost not a sound, just a tiny dark dot on the dry wood. You watch that dot, and soon another drop forms, slides, and falls. The rhythm of these drops is erratic, a slow, random beat that you begin to count without meaning to. One drop, then a pause of many breaths, then another. The counting becomes a meditation, a way to let time pass without marking it. The numbers come and go, and eventually you lose count, not with a start but with a gentle fading of attention, like a lantern turned down low. The light continues its slow change. The silver grey of earlier has now deepened, becoming the grey of uncombed wool, a soft matte tone that absorbs all highlights. The mast and the gunwales are dark silhouettes against it, their edges slightly blurred. You notice that the fog has begun to bead on your sweater, tiny droplets that cling to the wool fibers and make them sparkle faintly when you turn your head a certain way. You raise your hand and watch the same beading happen on your sleeve, a fine mist of moisture that does not wet but simply rests there, like a bloom on a plum. You brush it away and the wool feels dry underneath. It is a small thing, but it fills your attention for a long, slow minute. The boat has turned, you realize, no longer pointing in the same direction. The fog has made a slow revolution, or perhaps the current has shifted. It doesn't matter which. The bow now faces what feels like north, though north here is just a word with no visible referent. The compass, a small brass instrument mounted on the thwart, is enclosed in a wooden box with a glass lid. You lift the lid and look at the card, its slow, trembling swing, the needle pointing somewhere off to the right. You read the markings, a beautiful script of N and S and E and W, and you nod to yourself, not because you intend to go anywhere, but because it is good to know. The card steadies, then swings again, a gentle oscillation that will never quite rest. You close the lid, and the compass becomes again just a wooden box, its brass hinges softly glowing. Your stomach makes a small, quiet sound, and you think of the biscuit in your pocket. You reach into the deep pocket of your oilskin trousers and pull out a hardtack biscuit, pale and round, its surface pitted with tiny holes. You bite off a small piece, the biscuit crumbling slightly, and you chew slowly, the dry, salty taste filling your mouth. You take another sip from the canteen to soften it, and the meal is done. The crumbs you brush from your sweater fall into the water, where they float for a moment before a tiny ripple washes over them. The act of eating, so simple, seems to complete some small internal circuit, and you settle back against the mast, content. The fog is a country of its own, with its own geography and its own time. You have become a citizen of it, with no papers and no duties. The oars lie still, the net lies tangled, the bait sits in its box, and you sit among them all, a quiet figure in a quiet boat, on a quiet sea, under a quiet sky. The grey light holds you, and you hold it back, a perfect, reciprocal calm that asks nothing and gives everything. The morning has passed, or perhaps it is still passing. You cannot tell, and you do not need to. There is only this, the slow breath of the sea, the soft touch of the mist, and the steady, sleeping rhythm of the boat. The ribbons of fog that had been drifting in loose strands begin to gather and thicken, their edges blurring together like ink spreading in water. The mist no longer moves in separate pieces, but becomes one continuous body, a slow, rolling presence that presses in from all sides. You see it happen without alarm. It is simply a change in the texture of the air, a gradual closing of doors. The grey light that had filled the sky now seems to concentrate into a soft, luminous globe around the boat, and beyond that globe, nothing. The world beyond your gunwales vanishes stage by stage. First, the distant suggestion of a low cloud bank disappears, then the faint line where grey water met grey sky, then even the nearest swell of water just a few boat lengths away. Now you can see only a circle of sea, its surface smooth and dark, and the circle is shrinking. You ship the oars, pulling them in with a quiet clatter of wood on wood that seems strangely loud, and lay them along the benches. Their drips leave a pattern of dark spots that gleam for a moment before being absorbed by the dry wood. The boat, no longer propelled, settles into a slower rhythm, the momentum fading until it is merely drifting, the bow swinging gently to the right with some unseen current. You feel the shift in your body, a subtle leaning, and adjust your seat on the middle thwart. The wood is cool through your trousers, a sensation that keeps you tethered to the present moment. You fold your hands in your lap, one thumb resting on the back of the other, and watch the fog close the final few feet of clear air. The fog has a weight to it, not a physical weight you could measure, but a heaviness of presence. It feels like being wrapped in damp cotton, the air so thick you could almost cup it in your hands. The temperature has dropped a little, or perhaps it is the moisture on your skin that makes it seem so. Either way, the air feels cool and clean, carrying a scent of wet wool from your sweater and a faint, distant tang of iodine from the kelp. The smell of the bait box, which had been sharp, now mingles with the general dampness, becoming just another layer in the air's complex fabric. You breathe slowly, drawing the fog deep into your lungs, and the inside of your nostrils feels cool and slightly wet. The only visible world is now perhaps the length of an oar in any direction. You can see the bow clearly, its peeled green paint, and the dark metal ring where the painter is tied, the rust staining the wood around it like a soft brown shadow. The mast rises into the fog and disappears above your head, its upper portion lost in the white, so that it looks like a column that holds up nothing but the mist itself. The lantern hook sways with a tiny, regular tick, a sound that seems to come from very close and also from somewhere far inside your own hearing. You can see the water near the hull, its surface a dark, opaque glass that reflects the fog as a pale, wavering glow. Beyond the oar's length, the water simply merges into the white curtain, and the boundary is almost imperceptible, a slow fading of color from deep gray to silver to nothing. You sit still, letting the drift carry you, and notice that the quiet has deepened. The faint hum you could hear earlier, that low planetary note, has been muffled further, so that now it is only a suspicion of sound, a vibration you feel in your chest rather than hear with your ears. In its place, the smaller sounds of the boat have grown more distinct. The hull gives a tiny wooden creak as it adjusts to a slight swell, the sound travelling through the planks and into your seat. The mast partner, where the mast passes through the thwart, gives a soft, dry groan, like an old door settling in its frame. A stray droplet of condensation falls from the lantern glass onto the deck with a sound so small it is like the prick of a needle. All these sounds are isolated, each one surrounded by a halo of silence, and they seem to have a meaning that is not meaning, a language of pure presence. You shift your position, drawing your feet up onto the floorboards and resting your forearms on your knees. The movement causes the boat to wobble slightly, a slow side-to-side rocking that subsides after a few waves. You watch the water respond, a tiny wavelet that spreads out and is swallowed by the fog after traveling less than a foot. The water is very cold. You know this from the feel of the air, from the slight numbness on your cheeks, but you do not test it yet. Instead, you listen to the sound it makes against the hull, a gentle, repetitive lap that is softer than a whisper. The rhythm is irregular but predictable, a pattern of small slaps and long silences, like a sleeper breathing in and out. The fog seems to absorb even this sound, so that it does not travel but stays right at the boat's side, a private conversation between wood and water. You notice that your sweater, which was dry, now feels damp on the outer surface, the wool fibers beginning to bead with moisture. The cream color has darkened slightly at the shoulders, a faint watermark spreading. The air is so saturated that every breath you exhale adds a small, fleeting cloud to the general mist, though the cloud vanishes almost before it forms. You raise your hand and watch a thin film of moisture condense on the back of your wrist, tiny drops that cling to the fine hairs and catch the diffuse light like minuscule pearls. You rub them away with your thumb, and the skin beneath feels cool and slightly sticky. It is not uncomfortable. It is simply the way of things in this enclosed, drifting world. The fog itself is not uniform. Though it appears at first glance to be a solid white blanket, when you look closely you see that it moves with slow internal currents, like cream poured into coffee. There are patches of slightly thinner air, where the grey light comes through more strongly, and patches of thicker mist that are almost opaque. These patches shift and swirl, now opening a small corridor of visibility, now closing it. Sometimes, for a second or two, you can see a few extra feet of water, the surface looking like hammered pewter, and then the view closes again, soft as a door pulled shut. The effect is dreamlike, a slow dance of revelation and concealment that has no pattern you can discern, but a rhythm you can feel. You find your breathing synchronizing with these slow pulses, in as the fog thins, out as it thickens. You become aware of the boat's own small inventory, each item standing out with a new clarity, because there is nothing else to look at. The coiled rope, with its neat figure-8 loops, each twist identical to the last, its fibers casting tiny shadows in the flat light. The creel basket, its slats curved and silvered, the gaps between them making a pattern of dark and light that shifts as the boat rocks. The bait box, its lid closed, a single smudge of fish scale stuck to the corner, glinting faintly. The oars, their white blades resting side by side, the handles worn smooth and dark. The anchor chain, each link a small dark oval, the pile of it looking like a sleeping snake. The compass box, its glass lid reflecting a tiny distorted image of the fog, a miniature world of grey and white. All these things are ordinary, but in the cocoon of the mist they become the entire universe, a small museum of your own making. You let your gaze rest on the compass. You lift the lid again, the brass hinges giving a faint, smooth click. The cart swings slowly, the needle hunting north, and you watch the oscillation with a kind of drowsy fascination. The markings are elegant. The N, with its fine serifs, the arrowhead of the needle. The tiny print of the manufacturer's name you have never been able to read without squinting. You do not squint now. You simply observe the slow, trembling balance of it, a perfect miniature of a universe in equilibrium. You close the lid, and the compass becomes a box once more, a small wooden cube with brass corners that gleam softly. The world outside the glass is still white, still quiet. You decide to test the water's temperature, leaning over the side and dipping your fingers into the sea. The cold is immediate and sharp, a clean, liquid chill that sends a shiver up your arm. You leave your hand there for a few seconds, feeling the water flow between your fingers, its texture like heavy silk, and then you pull it out. The droplets that fall from your fingertips are silver in the grey light, each one a tiny falling world. You wipe your hand on the rag under the seat, and the rough cloth feels warm by comparison. The cold lingers on your skin for a while, a gentle numbing tingle that gradually fades. The boat drifts on, and the hole your hand made in the water is already gone, swallowed by the fog and the slow swell. You think about the shore that is now hidden, the small village with its wooden houses and the flake with drying cod. You cannot see it, and you cannot point to it, but you know it is there, somewhere behind the white curtain. The knowledge is not an anxiety, it is just a fact, like knowing your own name. You feel no need to return to it, no pull of urgency. The fog has its own kind of shelter, a soft, featureless room without walls. In this room, time behaves differently. It does not march, but drifts, matching the boat's slow pace. Morning and evening words, not can add. There is only this, the grey light, the cool air, the gentle rock, the quiet. A new sound enters the stillness, one you have not heard before. It is a very distant, low-pitched moan, long and drawn out like the note of a great, hidden horn. It comes once, then after a long pause, again, slightly fainter. You recognize it as the foghorn from a lighthouse many miles away, its sound carried through the mist in strange looping paths. The horn speaks once more, a deep, resonant call that seems to vibrate in the air around you, and then it falls silent. You wait, counting the slow beats of your heart, but it does not sound again. Perhaps the fog has shifted and blocked its path, or perhaps the lighthouse has turned its attention elsewhere. The memory of the sound lingers, a warm bass thread woven into the quiet fabric. You realize you have been holding your breath and let it out slowly, the air leaving you in a long, silent stream. The boat continues its lazy pivot, and you feel the sensation of turning without seeing any landmarks, a gentle, dizzying movement that is almost pleasant. The water's caress against the hull changes from a soft slap to a deeper, more resonant thud as the boat meets a slightly heavier swell, then returns to the whisper. The fog, in response, seems to press a little closer, then relax. This breathing rhythm between boat and mist and sea is so slow that it takes many minutes to complete one full cycle. You are caught in the middle of it, a quiet passenger on a journey that has no destination. You think again of the net, lying tangled on the forward bench. The thought comes to you like a drifting leaf, and you consider getting up to sort it. You picture the motion, lifting the brown mesh, finding an end, pulling it hand over hand, untangling the loops and letting the weights hang free. But the thought remains just a thought. Your body is too heavy, too comfortable, too perfectly settled into the thwart. The mast supports your back, its roundness fitting the curve of your spine. The blanket, which you pulled from the stern earlier without remembering doing so, is now across your lap, its rough wool trapping a layer of warmth. You adjust it with a small, lazy movement, tucking it under your thighs. The idea of standing up seems like a monumental effort, not because you are tired, but because there is no reason to move. Stillness has become the natural state. The light begins to change again, the first real sign that time is passing. The pearly grey of earlier has deepened into a darker, cooler tone, the colour of worn lead. The fog remains just as thick, but the quality of light within it has shifted, as if the source, the hidden sun, has moved across an unseen sky. The darkness does not feel threatening. It feels like a gradual dimming of a lamp, a gentle transition towards evening. The droplets on the lantern glass now catch the light differently, glinting with a softer, more amber glow. The fog itself seems to have a faint luminescence, a light that comes from within, as if the mist itself is holding the memory of the day. You look at your hands again. The knuckles and the small scar, the way the skin is creased from the cold. They look older in this light, more weathered, like the hands of someone else. You flex them slowly, feeling the tendons move under the skin, and the motion is satisfying in a deep, quiet way. You rub your palms together, the friction creating a dry, papery sound, and the warmth that results spreads up your wrists. You cup your hands and breathe into them, the air from your lungs hot and moist, and the fog welcomes your offering, taking it into itself without comment. The seabirds have all gone now, finding their roosts on the hidden rocks and ledges. The silence is complete, but for the boat's own small orchestra. The loose block on the mast taps against the wood, a sound that comes and goes without pattern, like a lazy metronome. The water laps, the hull creaks, the lantern tick-ticks. These sounds are so regular that they become a kind of auditory wallpaper, something you hear without hearing, a comforting presence that reassures you that the world still exists. If they were to stop, you think, you would notice immediately, but they do not stop. They keep their slow, steady rhythm, a lullaby without a tune. You feel a slight thirst and reach for the canteen again, your movements slow and unhurried. The metal is cool and smooth, the dent on its side familiar to your fingers. You unscrew the cap and drink, the water tasting of tin and the memory of a stream. You take only a small sip, enough to wet your mouth, and replace the cap with the same careful attention. The ritual of drinking, like the ritual of checking the compass, has become a small anchor, a way to mark a moment in the endless drift. You hang the canteen back on its hook, and it sways with the boat, a tiny pendulum keeping time with the sea. The fog, you notice, has begun to develop a texture on its inner surface, a fine, granular quality like the skin of an orange. This is a sign that the mist is condensing, the tiny water droplets coalescing into larger ones that will eventually fall as a fine drizzle. You see the first of these drops hit the water, a small circular ripple that expands and vanishes. Then another and another, until there is a soft, continuous pattering sound, like the footsteps of 100 tiny creatures. The drizzle is so light that it does not wet your blanket immediately. It just beads on the surface, the drops sitting there like tiny, round jewels. You pull the blanket a little higher, up to your chin, and the sound of the drizzle on the wall is a soft, rustling hiss that adds a new layer to the boat's quiet music. The drizzle makes the fog slightly thinner, or perhaps it is just your perception. The circle of visibility remains the same, but the air within that circle seems clearer, the colors more defined. The green of the boat's paint is a deeper, richer hue, and the rust on the metal ring glows like old brick. The water, as it receives the tiny drops, seems to shiver with a million small movements, a delicate, shimmering surface. You watch it for a long time, your eyes half closed, the scene becoming a soft blur of grey and green and silver. The rhythm of the drizzle, the tap of the block, the creak of the mast, all blend into one continuous, soothing sound that fills your ears and empties your mind. You let your head fall back against the mast again, and you close your eyes. The darkness behind your lids is not black, but a soft, reddish grey, and you see faint drifting shapes that are just the workings of your own eyes. The boat rocks, and you rock with it, a single entity moving in the palm of the sea. The fog holds you, the drizzle sings its tiny song, and you breathe in and out, with the slow, steady rhythm of the deep. There is no thought of home, no thought of morning, no thought of anything but the gentle, endless drift of the fog closing in, until the whole world is just this boat, this mist, this quiet and you. Time passes in the fog, not as a series of hours, but as a slow accumulation of small tasks, each one a quiet anchor for the mind. You become aware, after a long interval of stillness, that your hands are resting idle on your knees, and that the net still lies tangled on the forward bench where you left it, a heap of brown mesh and lead weights and cork floats, waiting. The thought of sorting it comes to you again, drifting through your mind like a slow-moving cloud. And this time you let the thought become an action. You shift your weight on the thwart, the wood creaking softly, and you lean forward to gather the net into your lap. The mesh is cool and slightly damp, smelling of old salt and the faint, dusty scent of dried kelp that has been caught in its strands many times before. You lift the net hand over hand, the rough twine sliding across your palm, the tiny knots catching gently on your calluses, with a sensation that is almost a tickle. The net is a familiar weight, its bulk settling across your thighs like a heavy, unstitched blanket. You find an end, a loose strand where the twine is frayed into a small brush of fibers, and you hold it between your thumb and forefinger, twisting it slowly. The motion is automatic, a habit learned long ago, and it brings with it a calm that spreads through your chest. The net needs mending in places, but the tears are small, just a few broken strands that you note and file away for later. You run your hand along the mesh, feeling the pattern of squares and diamonds, the rhythm of the knots, each one a tiny hard bump under your fingertips. The cork floats, spaced at regular intervals, are smooth and cool, their surfaces pitted with age and stained a dark, waterlogged brown. The lead weights, sewn into the opposite edge, are cold and heavy, and they click together with a muffled metallic sound when you shift the net in your lap. You begin the slow process of untangling, finding where one section has looped over another, lifting and separating the strands with careful, unhurried movements. The fog presses in around you, a silent witness, its cool moisture beading on the net and making the twine slightly darker. You work without looking, your fingers knowing the way, and your mind drifts into a state that is not quite concentration and not quite daydreaming. A gentle middle ground where the only thing that exists is the feel of the mesh and the slow, steady rhythm of your breath. A loop comes free, and you pull it through, the twine sliding with a soft, whispering sound. Another loop, and another, each small release a tiny satisfaction that asks for no recognition. Time stretches, and you pause to wipe the moisture from your forehead with the back of your hand. The fog has not changed. The white wall remains just beyond the oar's length, its texture shifting slowly, like a slow-stirred pot of milk. You can hear the water lapping against the hull, a sound so constant that it has become a part of you, a baseline beneath all other sounds. The mast creaks softly, the lantern hook ticks, and somewhere far off, a gull gives a single, lonely cry that seems to come from every direction at once. You return to the net, your fingers finding a small knot that is pulled tight, and you work it loose with patient circular motions, the twine warming under your touch. After what might be many minutes or half an hour, the net lies in a loose, orderly coil on your lap, the tangles smoothed out, the edges aligned. You lift it, feeling its full weight, and set it aside on the forward bench, where it settles with a soft, heavy sigh. The task is done, but the quiet satisfaction it brings is not a sharp feeling. It is a soft, diffused warmth, like the heat from a low-burning lamp. You rest your hands on your knees again, your palms up, and you notice the faint crisscross pattern the twine has pressed into your skin, a temporary map of your labor that will fade in a few minutes. You watch it, and you wait. The bait box draws your attention next, its wooden lid shut tight, the smudge of fish scale still glinting in the corner. You reach over and lift the lid, the hinge giving a tiny, muffled groan that seems louder in the fog's thick silence. Inside, the chopped herring lies in its bed of oil and salt, the pieces still glistening, their silver skin and pink flesh catching the grey light. The smell rises, sharp and clean, and you breathe it in without hurry. You pick up a piece, a small triangular chunk, and hold it between your fingers, feeling its cold, slippery texture. The fish is firm, not yet softened by the air, and you place it back, wiping your fingers on the rag. The lid closes with a soft wooden thud, and the bait box becomes again just a box, a dark, quiet cube on the deck. You decide to rebait a hook, even though you know you will likely catch little in this fog, the motion itself being the point. The fishing line is coiled on a wooden spool near the stern, a long, dark thread that gleams faintly with oil. You pull the length of it, the line humming slightly as it unspools, and you find the end where a bare hook is tied, a curved piece of steel with a barbed point. The hook is cold, and you hold it carefully, your fingers avoiding the sharp tip. You take another piece of herring from the box and thread it onto the hook, the flesh parting easily, the silver skin catching the light as you twist the bait into place. The act is simple, meditative, the kind of task that has been done 1,000 times before by 1,000 hands in 1,000 boats just like this one. You lower the baited hook over the side, the line paying out through your fingers with a soft zipping sound, and you feel the slight tug as the hook hits the water and begins to sink. You let it go down a ways, then stop, holding the line between your thumb and forefinger, feeling for any tremor. The boat sways in a long, slow circle, a lazy pivot that takes many minutes to complete. You feel the turn in your body, a gentle, leaning sensation, and you watch the fog to see if it reveals any clues. It does not. The white wall remains unbroken, moving with you as if the fog itself is turning in sympathy. The only sign of motion is the faint thread of current that pulls the line alongside the hull, straightening it for a moment before letting it curl again into a loose, drifting loop. You watch the line, the way it trembles slightly with the boat's rocking, the way the water beads on its surface and runs down in tiny silver rivulets. There is no tug, no sign of a fish, just the slow, patient waiting. The fog's color shifts as the unseen sun climbs somewhere behind it, the pearl of earlier deepening to a soft, luminous gray, then to a cooler, darker tone that holds a hint of blue. You can tell that it is midday, or near to it, by the quality of the light, a flat, even brightness that has no shadow. The moisture on the deck has dried in places, leaving faint, pale rings where salt has crystallized. Tiny white dots that catch the light like a dusting of sugar. You run your finger through one of these rings and the salt crumbles into a fine, dry powder that sticks to your skin. You taste it, a quick, salty spark on your tongue, and then you wipe your finger on your trousers. The waiting is not an empty thing, it is full of small observations. You notice the way the fog has beaded on the mast, the droplets forming and merging and sliding down in slow, wandering paths. You notice the gentle curve of the gunwale, the way the green paint has worn thin at the oarlocks, exposing the grey wood beneath. You notice the texture of the blanket on your lap, its rough weave and the tiny pills of wool that have formed on the surface. These things fill your attention, each one a small world, and you move from one to the next without effort, a slow, drifting census of your surroundings. The line in your hand gives a faint, almost imperceptible tug, not of fish, but perhaps a piece of drifting weed, and you pull it up slowly, hand over hand, the line coiling wetly on the deck. The hook emerges from the water, the bait still intact, a little swollen from the soaking, and you swing it into the boat. You remove the herring and toss it over the side, where it floats for a moment before a tiny ripple carries it away into the fog. You rebait the hook with another piece from the box, the motion as slow and careful as before, and lower it again, the line paying out with the same soft, humming sound. The afternoon begins its slow turn towards evening, though the fog keeps the exact hour hidden. The light dims by degrees, the grey becoming deeper, the air cooling by a fraction. You feel the chill on your cheeks and the tips of your ears, and you pull the blanket higher, tucking it under your chin. The wool smells faintly of lanolin and the sea, a clean homespun scent that is deeply comforting. Your stomach makes a small, quiet sound, and you reach into your pocket for the biscuit. The hardtack is dry and salty, and you eat it slowly, biting off small pieces and letting them soften in your mouth before swallowing. Each crumb you brush from your sweater falls onto the deck, and you watch them lie there, pale against the dark wood. A sip from the canteen washes the last of the biscuit down, the water cool and metallic, and you replace the cap with a careful, twisting motion. The boat continues its slow, circular drift, the bow pointing now towards where the sun might be setting, now towards where it might have risen. The fog remains constant, a thick, soft presence that has erased all edges. You lean back against the mast, your head resting on the rough wood, and you let your eyes close. The sounds of the boat fill your ears, the creak of the mast, the tap of the block, the lap of the water, the distant, muffled moan of a foghorn that comes and goes like a slow heartbeat. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the sea, a deep, steady cycle of in and out. The line in your hand goes slack, then taut, then slack again, a gentle, undemanding pulse. You think about the shore, the small village with its dark windows and its gravel path, but the thought is distant and unfocused, like a memory of a memory. There is no pull towards it, no sense of needing to return. The fog is a world complete unto itself, a soft, quiet cocoon where the only measures are the tide and the light and the slow, steady beating of your own heart. You feel the boat rise on a slightly larger swell, a gentle lift that takes a long breath to complete, and then sink back down, a slow, sighing fall. The motion is hypnotic, and you let yourself sink into it, your mind empty of everything but the present moment. The foghorn sounds again, closer this time, a long, low note that seems to vibrate in the planks of the boat. You open your eyes, but there is nothing to see, only the white wall and the dark water and the faint, ghostly outline of the bow. The horn fades, and the silence that follows is deeper than before, a thick, velvety quiet that wraps around you like a second blanket. You pull the line in again, slowly, coiling it neatly, and set the hook and the spool aside. Fishing can wait. Waiting itself is enough. The net, now neatly coiled, gleams faintly in the dim light, its mesh a pattern of tiny shadows. The bait box is closed, the creel basket empty, the oars resting. Everything is in its place, and you are in yours, a quiet figure in a quiet boat on a quiet sea. The fog presses in, its color now a deep, soft charcoal, and you watch the darkness gather, the transition so gradual that you cannot say when day becomes night. The lantern hangs from its hook, unlit, but soon you will light it, a small golden flame that will hold the dark at bay. For now, though, you sit in the grey dimness, your hands resting on the blanket, your breath slow and even, and you wait, perfectly still, perfectly calm, perfectly at peace. The fog has pressed so close and for so long that your eyes have almost forgotten the world of shapes and distances, leaving your ears to take over the work of perception. At first the silence seemed complete, a thick, muffled blanket that swallowed every sound as soon as it was born. But now, after hours of drifting in this soft, white cocoon, your hearing has sharpened and stretched, reaching out into the grey void and finding sounds that were always there, hidden beneath the surface of the quiet. The boat rocks with its slow, liquid rhythm, and you sit motionless on the thwart, your hands resting on the blanket, your head tilted slightly, listening. The fog is not silent, you have discovered. It is full of tiny voices, a whole hidden world of sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. The first sound that your ears pick out is a bellbuoy, somewhere far off in the mist, its note low and resonant, like a single drop of honey falling into a deep pool. It strikes once, a clear, round tone that hangs in the air for a long moment before fading, and then, after a pause that you can measure in slow heartbeats, it strikes again, this time a higher note, thinner and brighter. The two notes, low and high, are always paired, always the same interval apart, and they seem to come from a place that has no direction. You turn your head one way, and the bell is faint. You turn another, and it is slightly louder, but still impossibly distant, as if it is not located at a point, but diffused throughout the fog itself. The sound is swallowed almost as soon as it is born, the second note dying away before the first has fully faded, so that they blend into a single, melancholy chord that repeats and repeats, a slow, drowsy metronome marking the passage of the hidden sea. Between the bell's paired notes, the silence rushes back in, but it is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with a very faint, high hiss, a sound so subtle that you might mistake it for the blood moving in your own ears. This hiss is the texture of the fog itself, the sound of a million tiny droplets of moisture settling on the surface of the water, a soft, continuous shush that forms the background against which all other sounds are etched. It is like the sound of sand being poured very slowly from a great height, or the distant breath of a sleeping animal, a quiet exhalation that never stops. You close your eyes and let it fill your head, a gentle, undemanding hum that seems to come from the boundary where the mist meets the sea, a sound of pure, damp stillness pressing in from all sides. As you listen, a new sound emerges from the hiss, a single, lonely cry that seems to tear the fabric of the fog for an instant before the quiet stitches it back together. It is a gull, somewhere far off, invisible and alone, its call a series of 3 descending notes, each one softer than the last, the final note trailing away into a faint, breathy whisper. The cry hangs in the air for a moment, a thin silver thread of sound that curves through the mist, and then it dies away without an echo, leaving only the memory of its shape. You wait, counting the slow lift and fall of the boat, but the gull does not call again. Perhaps it has flown on, or perhaps it has settled on some unseen rock and tucked its head under its wing. The silence returns, deeper than before, and you realize that the gull's cry has made you aware of just how vast the empty space around you truly is. A cathedral of mist and water with no walls and no ceiling. Closer to the boat, much closer, the water speaks against the hull with a voice that is soft and intimate. It is a tiny, kissing sound, a liquid whisper that repeats with each small swell, never hurried, never stopping. The water laps at the wooden planks with a gentle, continuous rhythm, a sound that is less a noise and more a sensation, a cool, wet caress that you can feel in the soles of your feet and the palms of your hands. Sometimes the lap is a single, soft tick, like a tongue touching a spoon. Other times it is a longer, wetter slurp, as a slightly larger wavelet rolls under the boat and slaps the hull with a muffled, hollow sound. The rhythm is irregular, a slow, unpredictable pattern of small slaps and long, breathy pauses. But it has its own logic, its own sleepy, liquid music. You lean your head towards the side of the boat, letting the sound fill your right ear, and you imagine you can feel the water's cool touch through the wood, a steady, soothing presence that rocks you with its endless, quiet song. Above your head, the mast settles in its step with a soft, dry creak, a sound that seems to come from the very bones of the boat. The wood rubs against wood, a gentle, groaning sigh that rises and falls with the boat's slow motion. Then, from the mast's upper reaches, where the rigging disappears into the fog, there comes a tap. It is the sound of a loose block, a small wooden pulley, swinging against the mast in the faint, imperceptible breeze. The tap is a single, sharp click, like a fingernail on a tabletop, and it comes once, then is still for many minutes. You wait, your ears straining, and just when you think it will not sound again, it does. A second tap, slightly softer, followed by another long silence. The tap has no rhythm, no pattern, just a random, sleepy punctuation that marks the slow drift of time. You find yourself listening for it, counting the breaths between each occurrence, and the waiting becomes a kind of meditation, a quiet game played in the mist. All these sounds, the distant bell, the fading gull, the lapping water, the creaking mast, the tapping block, are separate and distinct, each one a clear, bright thread in the fog's grey tapestry. But when you stop listening for them individually, when you let your attention go soft and wide, they begin to blend and merge, the threads weaving together into a single, continuous hum. The bell's low note slides into the water's lap. The gull's cry fades into the fog's hiss. The block's tap punctuates the mast's creak with a tiny wooden note. The whole becomes a kind of slow, sleepy music, a lullaby without a melody, played on instruments of water and wood and mist. It is a sound that has no beginning and no end, a gentle undulating drone that wraps around you and holds you in its soft, sonic cocoon. You become aware of your own breathing, a sound that you had not noticed before but which now joins the orchestra. Each inhale is a soft, dry rustle of air passing through your nostrils. Each exhale is a warmer, moister sigh that mingles with the fog. Your breath has its own rhythm, slower than the water's lap, steadier than the bell's distant note, and you feel it synchronize with the boat's gentle rock, a deep, internal tide that rises and falls in time with the sea. You place your hand on your chest and feel the quiet thump of your heart beneath the wool sweater, a muffled, regular beat that adds its own low frequency to the mix, a bass drum playing softly beneath the trouble of the mist. The foghorn you heard earlier has fallen silent, but its memory lingers in your ears, a deep, resonant ghost that colors the way you hear all other sounds. Everything seems to vibrate at a slightly lower pitch now, the bell's note deeper, the water's lap more sonorous. Even the fog's hiss has taken on a new quality, a faint, almost subsonic hum that you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears, a vibration that might be the sound of the tide moving far below the surface or the distant rumble of waves against a hidden shore. It is a sound that seems to come from the earth itself, a planetary note that underlies everything, a deep, calming drone that speaks of vast, slow processes and ancient, patient rhythms. You shift your position on the thwart, and the movement creates a new sound, the rustle of your trousers against the wood, a soft, dry whisper that is immediately swallowed by the fog. The boat wobbles slightly, and the water responds with a slightly louder slap, a wet, clapping sound that echoes briefly in the mist before fading. Then the boat settles, and the sounds return to their normal quiet pitch, the lapping water, the creaking mast, the tapping block, the distant bell. You realize that you are not just a listener in this quiet world, you are a participant, your own small noises joining the choir, a single, temporary voice in the fog's long, slow song. You think about the men on the boats, perhaps somewhere out in the same mist, hearing the same bell, the same gull, the same foghorn. You picture them in your mind, shadowy figures sitting in their own wooden dories, their hands resting on oars or nets, their ears tuned to the same quiet frequencies. The thought is comforting, not lonely, a sense of shared solitude across the hidden water. You imagine their boats drifting like yours, slowly turning, the fog wrapping them in the same damp grey blanket, and you feel a quiet kinship with these unseen companions, a community of listeners scattered across the invisible sea. The bellboy chimes again, its 2 notes low and high, and this time you notice that the interval between the pair is slightly longer, the pause stretching out like a held breath. The change is so subtle that you might have missed it, but your ears, now so finely tuned, catch it immediately. Perhaps the tide has shifted, or the current has moved the buoy further away, or perhaps it is just your perception, your own internal clock slowing down to match the fog's unhurried pace. Whatever the cause, the sound is no less beautiful, the low note a warm round pebble dropped into a still pond, the high note a thin silver ripple that spreads out and fades. You let the sound wash over you, and you feel your shoulders drop, a tension you did not know you were holding, releasing into the grey air. The gull calls again, much closer this time, a single, sharp cry that startles you for a moment before you relax back into the quiet. You open your eyes and look up, but there is nothing to see, only the thick, rolling fog and the faint, darker shape of the mast disappearing overhead. The cry fades, and you hear the soft whistle of wings, a rapid, whooshing sound that passes over the boat and then fades into the mist. The gull is gone, and the silence that follows is deeper than before, a thick, velvety quiet that seems to press against your eardrums. You wait, holding your breath, and then the water laps again. The mast creaks, the block taps, and the world of sound reasserts itself, a familiar, comforting presence. The afternoon, if it is still afternoon, drags on in this way, the sounds repeating and varying in a slow, endless cycle. You close your eyes and let your head fall back against the mast, the wood cool and smooth against your scalp. The boat rocks, and you rock with it, your body heavy and warm under the blanket. The sounds blend together into a single seamless hum, the bell and the water and the mast and the block all merging into a gentle undulating drone that fills your head and empties it of thought. You are no longer listening, you are simply being, a quiet, receptive presence in a world of pure sound. The fog's hiss, that faint continuous shush, becomes the dominant note, the drone against which the other sounds play their brief, melodic phrases. It is like the sound of a distant waterfall, or the rustle of wind through a field of dry grass, a soft, unending whisper that seems to come from the very fabric of the air. You breathe in, and the hiss is there. You breathe out, and it is still there, a constant companion, a soft, sonic blanket that covers you and keeps you warm. You feel your mind begin to drift, not into sleep, but into a state that is adjacent to sleep, a quiet, floating awareness where the boundaries between inside and outside begin to blur. The bellboy chimes, and it is no longer a sound outside you, but a sound inside you, a low, resonant note that vibrates in your chest. The water laps, and it is your own pulse, a gentle, liquid beat that moves through your veins. The mast creaks, and it is your own joints, settling into place with a soft, comfortable sigh. The block taps, and it is a thought, a single clear idea that rises and falls and is gone. The gull cries, and it is a memory, a fleeting image of a white wing against a grey sky, there and then, not there. The fog hisses, and it is the sound of your own breathing, a soft, continuous shush that has no beginning and no end. You sit in this state for a long time, your body still and heavy, your mind drifting on a slow, sound-filled current. The light behind your closed eyelids shifts from grey to a deeper grey, the day slipping towards evening without any visible change in the fog. The temperature drops a fraction, and you pull the blanket a little tighter, the wool scratching your chin with a soft, dry sound. The bellboy seems further away now, its notes fainter, the pause between them longer. The gull does not call again. The water's lap is softer, the masts creak more intermittent, the blocks tap a rare, distant punctuation. Even the fob's hiss seems to have quieted, as if the whole world is slowly falling asleep. And still you listen, your ears now so attuned to the quiet that you can hear the tiny, almost imperceptible sounds that you would never have noticed before. The soft, silky slide of a strand of your own hair against the wool collar. The faint, gritty sound of salt crystals forming on the gunwale. The distant, high-pitched hum of a small insect, perhaps a midge, that has somehow found its way into the boat and now hovers near your ear before drifting away. These sounds are so small, so delicate, that they seem to belong to a different world, a miniature realm of tiny, perfect noises that exists within the larger quiet. You open your eyes, and the fog is still there, grey and soft and endless. The boat still drifts, the lantern still swings, the oars still rest. Nothing has changed, and everything has changed. Your ears have become the whole world, a world made of sound, a world where distance and direction have no meaning, only pitch and rhythm and timbre. You sit, and you listen, and you let the sounds carry you. A quiet boat on a quiet sea, wrapped in a lullaby of mist and water, drifting towards the slow, deep, soundless sleep of the night. You lose track of how long you have been adrift. The light behind the fog brightens almost imperceptibly, then begins to dim again, a full arc of day passing in quiet shades. At some point, the grey above your head softened from pewter to a pale milky silver, the sun climbing somewhere behind the overcast and making the mist glow faintly. You noticed it without marking it, a gradual lightening that felt like a held breath, slowly released. Then, after a long interval of stillness, the silver began to deepen, the glow fading into a cool, dark slate, the first hint that the sun had started its slow descent towards an invisible horizon. The whole cycle turns around you, and you turn with it, a small, silent cog in a vast, unhurried machine. You sit on the middle thwart, your back resting against the mast, the blanket pulled up to your waist. The wood beneath you has grown warm from your body heat, a single patch of comfort in the cool, damp air. Your hands lie open on your knees, palms up, the fingers slightly curled, and you watch the faint play of light on the fine hairs of your wrists. The fog remains, constant as ever, but its texture shifts with the changing light, now a soft, luminous pearl, now a dense, woolly grey, now a dark, shadowed charcoal. You can read the passage of the day in these subtle shifts, a clock without hands, a calendar without pages. After a time, a slow internal clock reminds you of your body's small needs. You reach into the deep pocket of your oilskin trousers and pull out a hard biscuit, round and pale, its surface dotted with tiny holes where the baker's docker pressed down. The biscuit is dry and hard, and you hold it in your palm for a moment, feeling its light weight. You raise it to your mouth and bite off a small corner, the piece breaking away with a soft, dusty snap. The taste is simple, dry flour, a faint saltiness, a hint of old grain. You chew slowly, your jaw working in a steady, mechanical rhythm, the biscuit softening and turning into a paste that you swallow with a quiet, internal click. Eating takes time, and you give it all the time it needs. There is no hurry, no reason to rush. You take another bite, smaller than the first, and let it sit on your tongue while you gaze out at the fog. The fog, in turn, gazes back, blank and patient, holding you in its soft, grey gaze. The biscuit's dry crumbs cling to your lips, and you brush them away with the back of your hand, the tiny fragments falling onto the blanket and the deck. Some crumbs land on the coiled rope, lodging in the twists of hemp, and you consider picking them out, but decide against it. They will be there later, a small reminder of this moment. You wash the biscuit down with a sip of water from the tin canteen. The canteen is cool to the touch, its metal surface beaded with condensation that wets your fingers. You unscrew the cap, the threads turning with a faint, gritty sound, and tip the canteen to your lips. The water is lukewarm now, having lost the morning's chill, and it tastes of tin and a faint, distant memory of a spring. You take only a small mouthful, holding it on your tongue for a moment before swallowing, feeling the liquid travel down your throat in a slow, cool column. Another sip, and you replace the cap, twisting it tight. The canteen goes back on its hook, where it sways gently with the boat's motion, a small silver pendulum. The meal, such as it is, settles in your stomach with a quiet, comforting weight. You feel your body take the food and begin its slow, internal work, a gentle warmth spreading from your core. You pull the blanket a little higher, tucking it under your arms, and settle back against the mast. The wood is smooth and rounded, warmed by years of hands and backs, and it fits the curve of your spine like a familiar chair. You let your head rest against it, your gaze drifting upward to where the mast disappears into the fog, a straight dark line that vanishes into the grey. Your attention turns to the gunwale, where a fine dusting of salt has dried into tiny white crystals. The salt forms a thin, crusty line along the wood, the crystals catching the diffuse light and glinting like a field of minuscule stars. You lean forward and run your fingertip along the line, the salt crumbling under the pressure, its texture rough and dry. You bring your finger to your nose and smell the sharp, clean tang, a concentrated essence of the sea. Then you wipe your finger on your trousers, leaving a faint white smear, and settle back. The salt will return. The sea always provides more. Next to you, the bait box sits with its lid closed, but you can picture the contents clearly, the chopped herring, silver and pink, glistening with its own oil. You lift the lid just enough to peek inside, the hinge groaning softly, and the smell rises to meet you, a clean, briny scent that sharpens the air. The pieces of fish lie in a tidy jumble, their edges still sharp, their surfaces still moist. You close the lid and let the image linger in your mind, a small bright tableau of silver and rose against the grey wood. The fog seems to absorb the smell, carrying it away in tiny invisible currents, and soon the air is back to its familiar blend of salt and damp wool and wet wood. The boat continues its slow circular drift, a lazy rotation that takes many minutes to complete a full turn. You can feel the motion in your inner ear, a gentle tilting sensation that never quite stops. The bow points first towards a slightly lighter patch of fog, then swings around to face a darker, denser mass, then swings again to point to the blank, featureless wall. You try to guess the direction, but without a fixed point of reference, all guesses are meaningless. The compass in its box would tell you, but you feel no need to check it. The drift itself is enough, a slow, steady dance with no partner and no destination. The hours stretch out, long and empty and full. You watch the fog, and the fog watches you. Sometimes a small subtle change occurs. The mist thins for a moment, revealing a slightly wider circle of water, its surface like dark hammered metal. Then it thickens again, the circle contracting until you can barely see the bow. These fluctuations have a rhythm that you cannot predict, a slow breathing pattern that seemed to come from the sea itself. When the fog thins, you see more of the water, the faint ghostly reflections of the mast and your own silhouette. When it thickens, the world contracts to just the boat, a tiny wooden island in a sea of white. You notice the herring slices again, not by lifting the lid, but by the faint oily sheen that has seeped through the gap at the hinge, a tiny rainbow slick that catches the light. You watch it for a while, the way the colors shift and shimmer, a miniature aurora on the wooden box. Then your gaze moves on, drawn by nothing in particular, landing on the creel basket with its slatted sides, the gaps casting thin, dark stripes on the deck. A single loose strand of wicker pokes out, curling like a question mark, and you resist the impulse to snap it off. It will hold, just as everything holds. Time takes on a strange, elastic quality, stretching and contracting without logic. A minute can feel like an hour when you are watching a single drop of water form on the lantern glass, swell and fall. And yet, when you look back over the day, the hours seem to have slipped away like water through your fingers, leaving no trace but a faint memory of changing light. You think about the morning, the way you pushed off from the wharf, the feel of the oars in your hands, the sound of the seabirds. It feels impossibly distant, a scene from another life, though you know it was only this same day. The fog has cut you loose from time, and you float now in a timeless present, a quiet, endless now. Your body has settled into a deep physical stillness that feels almost like sleep, though you are awake. Your breathing is slow and shallow, your heartbeat a distant, muffled throb. Your limbs are heavy, your head full of a soft, cottony lightness. You feel no need to move, no urge to do anything. The boat rocks, and you rock with it, a passive passenger on a gentle sea. The only signs of life are the small, automatic adjustments your body makes. A slight shift of weight, a swallow, a slow blink. These things happen without your direction, as if your body has taken over and is running on its own quiet, internal tide. The fog has become a kind of companion, a silent, featureless presence that asks nothing and gives nothing but its own soft, grey self. You no longer look for landmarks or listen for signals. You simply sit and let the fog hold you, a boat within a cloud within a sea. The isolation is not loneliness, it is solitude, a deep, calm solitude that fills you up rather than emptying you out. You think of the shore with its wooden houses and its gravel path, but the thought has no pole. The shore is a concept, an idea. The fog is real, immediate, all-encompassing. You are here now, and that is enough. A small stray thought crosses your mind. You could light the lantern, just to have a point of light in the grey, but the thought passes, and you let it go. The lantern is there, hanging from its hook, its glass cool and clear, the wick dry and ready. It will be lit when the darkness comes, and not before. For now, the grey light is sufficient, a soft, even illumination that flatters nothing and hides nothing. You watch the lantern sway, its brass base catching a faint, dull gleam, and you imagine the flame that will later burn inside it, a small yellow heart in the midst of the mist. The temperature has not changed much, but you feel a slight, creeping chill on your cheeks and the tips of your ears. You pull the blanket up to your chin, the rough wool scratching softly, and tuck it around your shoulders. The blanket smells of lanolin and old salt, a clean animal scent that is deeply grounding. You burrow into it, creating a small, warm pocket of air around your face. Your breath comes out in faint, ghostly puffs that merge with the fog, adding your own small contribution to the great grey whole. You let your eyes close, not because you are tired, but because there is nothing new to see. The inside of your eyelids is a soft, reddish grey, and you watch the faint, drifting shapes that float across your visual field, the afterimages of the fog burned into your retinas. The shapes are formless and fleeting, tiny clouds that bloom and fade, a private light show for an audience of one. You follow them with a lazy, drifting attention, letting them come and go without grasping. The boat rocks, the water laps, the mast creaks, and you float in a warm, dark, internal sea. After a long while, you open your eyes again, and the light has changed once more. The grey now a deeper, cooler shade, the first true hint of evening. The fog has not lifted, but its color has shifted from a pale silvery gray to a darker bluer gray, like the color of a distant storm cloud. The air feels cooler, and you notice that the moisture on the deck has stopped drying, the wood remaining dark and damp. The herring and the bait box will keep through the night, you think, and the thought is a quiet, practical note in the symphony of stillness. You shift your weight, and the boat responds with a gentle, rocking motion, a slow side-to-side sway that settles after a few breaths. The movement stirs the air, and you catch a new scent, a faint, far-off hint of spruce and damp earth, a whisper of the land somewhere beyond the mist. It is so faint that you might be imagining it, but it lingers in your nostrils for a moment before fading back into the salt and the wall. You breathe deeply, trying to catch it again, but it is gone. The fog has swallowed it, just as it swallows everything. The day is now definitively moving towards night, the light draining away, drop by drop. The fog, which had been a luminous presence, now seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, becoming a dark, heavy curtain. The boat's interior grows dimmer, the details of the coiled rope and the creel basket softening into indistinct shapes. You can still see the compass box, a small dark cube, and the outline of the oars, but the sharp edges have blurred. The world is dissolving into a uniform, dusky grey, a soft, gentle dimming that feels like the closing of a door. You think about lighting the lantern soon, but not yet. There is a pleasure in the fading light, a quiet, melancholy beauty that you want to savour. The last of the day hangs in the air, a thin, grey film over everything, and you sit in the midst of it, a silent witness to the slow death of the light. The bellboy sounds in the distance, its two notes low and high, and this time they seem to carry a note of finality, a soft, sonorous farewell to the day. The water laps, the mast creaks, the block taps, and the hours drift on, carrying you with them, a quiet boat on a quiet sea, wrapped in the gentle, endless embrace of the fog. The fog is not one color, but many, all held within a narrow spectrum of grey and white and silver, and you sit in the midst of this quiet palette, watching the shades shift and blend with a slow, hypnotic grace. Close to the water, where the mist meets the sea, the color is a soft, luminous pearl, a pale, glowing grey that seems to have its own inner light, as if the water itself is breathing out a gentle radiance. This pearl grey hovers just above the surface, a band of cool, opalescent air that merges with the dark, glassy water so smoothly that you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. The light within it is diffuse and even, casting no shadows, and it makes the hull of the boat look like a dark, floating silhouette against a silver mirror. Higher up, the pearl deepens into the grey of unspun wool, a thick, matte tone that is soft and absorptive, swallowing light rather than reflecting it. This wool-grey layer is dense and heavy, hanging in folds and billows that shift with the slow currents of the air, and it wraps around the mast and the rigging like a heavy, damp blanket. The texture of this grey is not smooth but granular, composed of a billion tiny droplets that catch the diffuse light in a way that makes the whole mass seem to have a fine, velvety nap, like the surface of a moth's wing. You can see the mist moving within this layer, not as a wind, but as a slow internal drift, the droplets swirling in lazy spirals that rise and fall and fade. The color is constant, yet never still, a living grey that breathes and pulses with its own quiet life. At what might be the thinnest point of the fog, up where the sun must be hiding behind the overcast, there is a hint of amber that never quite breaks through, just a promise of warmth held suspended in the grey. This amber glow is so faint that at first you think it is a trick of your eyes, a warm afterimage born from staring too long at the cool tones. But it persists, a subtle, honeyed light that filters through the mist in a small, diffuse patch, no larger than a plate, that comes and goes with the slow breathing of the cloud. When it appears, the whole interior of the fog seems to warm by a degree, the grey taking on a slightly brownish cast, the silver warming towards gold. Then it fades, and the cool pearl and wool tones reassert themselves, leaving only the memory of that gentle, unreachable sun. You watch for the amber glow, waiting through the long, slow cycles of its appearance and disappearance, and the waiting itself becomes a quiet comfort. The boat's wood, wet with the constant mist, has turned almost black in contrast to the pale fog, the grain standing out in fine, dark lines that trace the curves of the planks like the lines on an old map. The green paint, which in full daylight is the color of weathered copper, now looks almost charcoal, a deep, muted tone that absorbs what little light there is. The bare wood where the paint has flaked away is darker still, a rich, brown-black that gleams with a faint, oily sheen of moisture. The grain in these bare patches is raised and rough, each line a tiny canyon that catches the fog's droplets and holds them in long, glistening streaks. You run your finger over one of these streaks, feeling the smooth wet wood and the slightly rougher paint edges, the texture a quiet tactile confirmation of the boat's long service. The contrast between the dark wood and the pale mist is stark yet soothing, a study in deep browns and soft greys that fills your vision with its restful simplicity. Your own hands, resting on your knees, look strangely vivid against the muted background, the knuckles weathered and brown, the nails pale and smooth. The skin on the backs of your hands is creased with fine lines, a network of tiny, dry rivers that spread and branch like the grain in the wood. The calluses on your palms are a darker brown, polished smooth by years of rope and oar, and they catch the light with a faint, waxy sheen. The small scar on your thumb, a white crescent-shaped mark, stands out clearly, a tiny, personal detail in the vast, impersonal fog. You turn your hands over looking at the palms and then the backs, and you notice how the color shifts. The palms are a lighter, pinker brown, the fingers slightly paler at the tips. These hands are familiar and strange at the same time, a small, intimate landscape that you explore with a slow, detached curiosity, watching the tendons move under the skin when you flex your fingers, the knuckles whitening and then relaxing. The fog's moisture has beaded on the fine hairs of your wrists, each droplet a tiny, perfect sphere that catches the light and holds a miniature reflection of the grey world. The fog's shifting tapestry becomes a slow cinema for a mind asking nothing but to watch, and you settle into your seat on the thwart, your back against the mast, your eyes half closed, letting the shapes form and dissolve without grasping at them. At one moment, the mist coalesces into a tall, straight pillar that rises from the water to the hidden sky, its edges soft and blurred, its color a slightly lighter gray than the surrounding fog. It stands there for a long minute, perfectly still, a ghostly column that might be the trunk of some ancient, vanished tree, and then it slowly leans, its top bending like a reed in a current, and it melts back into the general gray. You watch it go, and a few breaths later, a new shape appears, a long sloping hill that seems to rise from the sea itself, its contour smooth and gentle, like a mound of soft grey earth. The hill is crossed by faint, horizontal bands of lighter mist that look like contour lines on a map, and you can almost imagine walking up its gentle slope, though it has no substance, no location, no reality. Then the hill flattens, its peak sinking, its base spreading, and it becomes a flat, featureless plain that stretches to the limits of your vision before dissolving. The shapes come and go with a rhythm that is not your own, a slow tidal rhythm that seems to belong to the fog itself. A curtain forms, a long vertical sheet of thicker mist that hangs straight down from the upper layers, its edge ruffled like the hem of a heavy drape. It sways slightly, a slow pendular motion, and then it parts in the middle, opening a gap of slightly clearer air that shows a deeper, darker grey beyond before closing again. Then a series of small, rounded hummocks appears, like a line of low, misty islands marching across the water, each one perfectly distinct for a moment before they all merge into a single, undulating bank. You watch these formations with a passive, dreamy attention, your mind making no effort to interpret or remember them, simply observing the slow, silent pageant of the clouds. The colors continue their subtle dance as the day wears on, the pearl at the waterline growing slightly darker, the wool-grey upper layers taking on a faint bluish cast as the invisible sun begins its slow descent. The amber patch has vanished now, and the whole fog has cooled towards a more uniform slate-grey tone, though the variations are still there if you look closely. Near the boat, where the fog is thinnest, the grey has a silvery, almost metallic sheen, like the surface of a still lake under an overcast sky. Further out, where the mist thickens, the grey deepens to a soft, shadowed charcoal, a colour that seems to absorb your gaze and hold it in a cool, velvety embrace. The water itself has turned a deep, opaque jade, its surface still and smooth, reflecting the fob's grey in a darker, greener tone that makes the boundary between sea and sky a subtle, shifting gradient. You shift your focus to the lantern hanging from the mast, its brass base and clear glass chimney catching the diffuse light in quiet, understated ways. The brass is a dull, warm gold, tarnished in spots with a darker greenish patina, and it reflects the grey fog as a soft, distorted glow. The glass is cool and clear, but the moisture on the inside has created a faint, milky haze, a thin film of condensation that catches the light and breaks it into tiny, scattered rainbows. The wick inside, a thin, blackened cord, waits patiently for the match that will bring it to life. But for now it is just a dark line against the pale glass, a quiet promise of future warmth. The lantern sways with the boat's motion, a slow, gentle arc, and the light that plays on its surfaces shifts and changes, the brass now bright, now dim, the glass now clear, now clayey, a small, self-contained world of light and shadow. The coiled rope resting on the stern seat adds its own colour to the palette, a faded hemp brown that is warm and earthy against the cool greys. The rope's fibres have a slight golden undertone, a remnant of the sun-drenched fields where the hemp once grew, and this warmth is a quiet, grounding presence. Next to the rope, the creel basket's slats are a silvery weathered grey, their surfaces smooth and polished by the sea, and the gaps between them hold small pools of shadow that are almost black. The bait box, with its dark, oil-stained wood, adds a note of deep, rich brown, the fish scales on the corner glinting with a faint, rainbow iridescence that catches the pearl light and throws it back in tiny, fleeting flashes. You notice all these colours not as a catalogue, but as a slow, unfolding experience, one shade leading to the next, one texture blending into another. The grey of the fog is not a single note, but a chord, a complex harmony of tones that resonate together, and you are inside that chord, a quiet listener at the centre of a vast, silent music. The fob's grey holds within it the memory of every grey you have ever seen, the grey of a winter sky over a calm sea, the grey of a gull's wing, the grey of old, weathered wood, the grey of a stone, worn smooth by the tide. And yet it is its own colour, a unique, living grey that exists only here, only now, only in this drifting, timeless moment. As the day moves towards evening, the fog's colours continue to shift, the pearl at the waterline darkening to a deeper, more sombre tone, the wool-grey layers taking on a faint, violet hint that speaks of the coming night. The amber promise is long gone, replaced by a cool, even grey that holds no warmth, only a quiet, peaceful stillness. The shapes that form and dissolve have become slower now, more stately, as if the fog itself is growing tired. A long, flat shelf of mist appears, stretching out like a quiet grey beach, and then it sinks back into the general mass without a ripple. A tall, thin spire rises and bends and is gone. A series of soft, rounded arches forms like the windows of some vast underwater cathedral, and they hold their shape for a long, breathless minute before fading. You watch them all with the same gentle, unattached attention, letting them come and let them go. A slow cinema for a quiet mind. The light continues to drain away, and the colours become more muted, the contrasts softer. The dark, almost black wood of the boat now looks a deep, velvety brown, the grain lines still visible but fainter. Your hands, which had seemed so vivid, now blend more gently into the general dimness. The brown of your knuckles a warm note in the cool symphony. The coiled rope is a shadowy heap, the creel basket a dark, textured mound. The lantern's brass glints faintly, a single warm point in the growing coolness. The world is settling into a quiet, monochromatic harmony, a soft, grey lullaby that soothes the eyes and stills the mind. You let your head rest back against the mast, your eyes still open, but your gaze soft and unfocused, taking in the whole scene as a single, unified image: the dark boat, the pale fog, the shifting shapes, the quiet colors. The fog is a cocoon, and you are at its center, wrapped in layer upon layer of soft gray silk. The colors are not just seen but felt, a cool, calming pressure on your skin and your breath and your heart. The pearl at the waterline glows faintly, the wool-gray billows around you, the charcoal shadows deepen, and you float in the midst of it all, a quiet, colorless figure in a world made of quiet colors, drifting slowly, gently, endlessly, towards the soft gray sleep of the coming night. The gray light that has held you all day begins its final, slow retreat, the silver tones draining from the fog like water from a basin, leaving behind a deeper, more somber shade. The pearl at the waterline, which glowed so softly through the afternoon, has dimmed to a dark, lusterless slate, and the wool-grey layers above have thickened into a heavy, velvety charcoal that presses close against the boat. You can no longer see the bow clearly. It is just a darker shape against the general darkness, its outline blurred and soft. The mast above you has vanished entirely into the black, and the lantern hook, which you could trace with your eyes all day, now exists only as a faint, metallic gleam that comes and goes with the boat's slow rocking. The fog is no longer a visible presence but a felt one, a cool, damp weight on your cheeks and the backs of your hands, a thickness in the air that muffles every sound and holds the night close. You sit in this growing darkness for a while, your body heavy and still on the thwart, the blanket pulled up to your chin. The sounds of the boat, which have been your companions all day, seem louder now in the absence of light, the steady lap of water against the hull, the creak of the mast in its step, the tap of the loose block, all sharpened by the dark. The bellboy sounds again, its two notes low and high, but now they seem further away, as if the buoy itself is drifting into the night, its voice a thin silver thread that unravels and fades. You listen, your ears straining, and when the last echo dies, the silence that follows is so deep that it presses against your eardrums like a soft, dense cushion. It is a silence that asks for light, and you know it is time. You reach into the pocket of your oilskin trousers and find the matchbox, a small wooden box with a sliding lid that you have carried for years. The box is dry, its surface smooth and slightly oily from your fingers, and you hold it in your palm for a moment, feeling its familiar weight. You slide the lid open with your thumb, the wood catching slightly, and the tiny sulphurous scent of old matches rises to your nostrils, sharp and clean. Inside, the matches lie in a neat row, their red heads like a row of tiny sleeping buds. You take one out, feeling the thin, dry stick between your fingers, and you close the box, returning it to your pocket with a soft, muffled thud. The lantern hangs just above your head, its brass base and clear glass chimney cool to the touch. You lift the glass, the metal hinge giving a tiny, smooth squeak, and you tilt the chimney to expose the wick. The wick is a thin, blackened cord, its tip slightly frayed from the last lighting, and it carries the faint, oily scent of whale oil. You hold the match against the striker on the side of the lantern base, a small, rough patch of metal that has been worn smooth in its center. You draw the match across it with a quick, practiced motion, and the match head flares with a soft, hissing sound, a sudden, bright spark that dazzles your dark-adapted eyes. The flame catches, a tiny, wavering tongue of yellow and blue that curls around the matchstick, and you cup your hand around it to shield it from the damp air. You touch the flame to the wick, and it catches with a gentle, almost silent puff, the oil-soaked fibers drawing the fire upward into a steady, golden point. The flame settles quickly, a small upright teardrop of light that pushes the darkness back with a soft, warm pressure. You blow out the match with a gentle breath, the smoke a thin, curling ribbon that rises and vanishes, and you lower the glass chimney back into place. The lantern is now a living thing, a small, bright heart beating in the center of the boat, and its light fills the small space with a warm amber glow that feels like a welcome presence, a quiet companion in the vast, dark sea. The fog transforms the lantern's light into a hazy, golden sphere that extends only a few feet in every direction, a soft-edged cocoon of warmth and visibility that moves with the boat's slow rocking. Inside this sphere, you can see the details of the boat with a new clarity. The coiled rope, its fibers now a rich golden brown. The creel basket, its slats casting thin, dancing shadows. The bait box, its lid gleaming with a faint, oily sheen. The oars, their white blades glowing softly, like the wings of a sleeping bird. The water near the hull is no longer dark, but a deep, shimmering gold, the ripples catching the lantern's light and throwing it back in 1,000 tiny, wavering reflections that tremble and fade. Beyond the golden sphere, the fog is a solid, velvety black, a wall of darkness that holds the light close and lets nothing pass. The lantern's glass begins to bead with moisture from the damp air, each droplet catching the flame and throwing tiny prisms of light that flicker and dance on the wooden surfaces. You watch a single drop form near the top of the chimney, a small, glistening pearl that swells slowly until it is too heavy to hold, then slides down the glass in a slow, wavering path, leaving a thin, wet trail behind it. When it reaches the brass base, it pools for a moment, then drips onto the deck with a sound so soft it is almost not a sound, just a tiny, liquid tick that is swallowed by the general quiet. Another drop forms and follows, and another, a slow, patient procession that marks the passing seconds with its quiet, watery rhythm. You settle back against the mast, the wood now warmed by the lantern's glow, and you pull the blanket around your shoulders. The light creates a small pocket of warmth in the damp air, and you feel it on your face, a gentle, golden heat that is barely there but deeply comforting. The flame sways with the boat's motion, a slow, pendular swing that sends the shadows rocking back and forth across the deck. The rope's coil seems to breathe, its loops widening and narrowing as the light shifts. The creel basket's stripes lengthen and shorten, the oar blades seem to lift and settle. It is a hypnotic, sleepy dance, and you watch it with half-closed eyes, your mind drifting on the slow, golden tide. The world beyond the lantern's glow ceases to exist, or perhaps it was never there at all. The sea, the fog, the hidden sky all are reduced to this small golden circle, this tiny floating room lit by a single flame. You are not lost, you are simply here, in this moment, in this light, and the night wraps around you like a second blanket, thick and dark and soft. The sounds of the boat, which had seemed so sharp in the darkness, are now muted again, softened by the lantern's presence, as if the light itself has a calming effect on the noise. The water laps with a gentler rhythm, the mast creaks with a quieter, more settled tone, the block taps with a softer, more distant note. Even the bellboy seems further away, its voice a faint, dreamy murmur that barely reaches your ears. You arrange a folded tarpaulin in the stern, the canvas stiff and cool under your hands, its surface slightly rough with dried salt. You spread it out, smoothing the wrinkles, and then you lie down, your head resting on a coil of rope that serves as a pillow, its hemp fibers scratching gently against your cheek. The rope smells of the sea and of your own hands, a familiar, grounding scent. You pull a second blanket over your body, a heavy wool blanket that has been folded in the bow, its fibers still holding a faint, cool dampness from the fog. The weight of it settles over you, a comforting pressure that anchors you to the boat, and you feel your body begin to relax, sinking into the tarpaulin and the wood beneath. The lantern swings gently above your head, its golden light playing on your closed eyelids, a warm orange glow that seems to seep through your skin and fill your mind with a soft, peaceful radiance. The night settles around you, deep and quiet, and you lie in the bottom of the boat, your body rocking with the sea's slow rhythm, your ears filled with the gentle, familiar sounds. The lantern's flame is a steady, upright teardrop, its tip flickering slightly with the boat's motion but never wavering, a constant golden companion in the vast dark. The moisture continues to bead on the glass, the droplets sliding down in slow, silent procession, each one a tiny, fleeting world of reflected light. You watch them for a while, your eyes half open, then close them again, letting the warmth and the sound and the gentle motion carry you deeper into the quiet. You become aware of the lantern's oil level, not as a worry, but as a simple fact. The reservoir is full enough to last through the night and into the morning, a steady supply of fuel that will keep the flame alive while you rest. The thought is a quiet reassurance, a small practical note in the back of your mind, and then it fades, replaced by the immediate sensation of warmth on your face and the cool, damp air on the back of your neck. You pull the blanket up over your head, creating a small, dark tent of wool that traps your breath and warms your cheeks, and you listen to the sound of your own breathing, a slow, steady rhythm that matches the sea's gentle rise and fall. The fog presses close against the boat, a soft, silent presence that holds you in its dark embrace, and the lantern blows at its center, a tiny golden sun in a universe of mist. The flame is the only fixed point in a world without edges, and you feel yourself drawn to it even with your eyes closed, a quiet gravitational pull that keeps you centered and calm. The boat drifts and the lantern drifts with it, a floating sphere of light on a dark, invisible sea. The bellboy sounds once more, very far away now, its notes a faint, silver memory, and then it falls silent, leaving only the lap of water, the creak of wood, the tap of the block, and the soft, steady hiss of the flame. Time passes, but you have no way to measure it, no need to measure it. The night is a long, slow river, and you are a boat on its current, drifting through the dark with the lantern as your guide. You think briefly of the shore, the small village with its wooden houses and its gravel path and its dark windows, but the thought is distant and unreal, a picture in a book you once read. Here, in the boat, in the fog, in the lantern's golden sphere, there is only now, only this slow, quiet moment that stretches into forever. You shift your position, turning onto your side, and the boat rocks gently with the movement, a slow, lulling sway that settles quickly. The tarpaulin rustles beneath you, a soft, crinkling sound that is immediately absorbed by the night. You tuck your hands under the blanket, folding them against your chest, and you feel the slow, steady beat of your heart, a quiet, internal drum that keeps time with the sea. The lantern's light filters through the wool of the blanket, a faint orange glow that colors the inside of your cocoon, and you close your eyes, letting the warmth and the sound and the motion blend into one seamless, peaceful whole. The flame continues its quiet work, consuming the oil with a slow, steady appetite, and the golden sphere remains constant, a small, bright island in the dark. The fog, outside the light, is a cool velvet black, its moisture condensing on the hull and the gunwales and the mast, dripping back into the sea with soft, irregular ticks. The boat's wooden bones settle and creak, adjusting to the night's cold, and you listen to these sounds as a child listens to a lullaby, each creak and lap and tap a note in the quiet music of the sea. The night is a vast, gentle presence, and you are held within it, a small, warm speck of life adrift on the deep. You lose yourself in the slow, golden rhythm, your mind emptying of all thoughts, all memories, all expectations. There is only the light, the warmth, the gentle rock, the quiet sounds. The lantern's flame is a tiny, steady dancer, and you watch it through the fabric of your blanket, its orange glow softening and spreading, filling your closed eyes with a warm, peaceful color. The bellboy is silent now, the gull long gone, the foghorn a distant memory. The world is reduced to this boat, this light, this night, and you are exactly where you need to be, perfectly safe, perfectly still, perfectly calm. The hours slip by, one after another, and you do not count them. The lantern burns on, its reservoir slowly emptying but its flame still strong and steady. The fog holds its breath, the sea breathes in and out, and you drift on the slow dark tide, wrapped in wool and canvas and golden light. Your body is heavy, your mind is light, and you hover on the edge of sleep without ever quite falling, suspended in a state of deep, peaceful rest that is more restful than sleep itself. The lantern is your companion. The night is your shelter, and you let yourself be carried, a quiet passenger on a quiet sea, through the long, slow, golden hours of the night. The deepest part of the night arrives without announcement, a gradual thickening of the dark that you sense rather than see, for the lantern's golden sphere has become your entire world, and the blackness beyond it a featureless velvet void. The fog, which all day was a shifting, breathing presence, now presses so close against the boat that it seems to have weight, a soft, dense pressure that holds the dory in a gentle, immovable grip. The lantern's glow, which had seemed so bright against the early dark, is now muted, its edges blurred and softened, the flame itself reduced to a soft orange pulse that beats in time with some slow, hidden rhythm. The light no longer reaches out to touch the water with its golden fingers. Instead, it huddles close to the glass, a warm, wavering heart that illuminates only the inside of its own chimney and the small, damp circle of deck directly beneath. The brass base gleams with a dull, tawny warmth, and the moisture on the glass has become a fine, even film that scatters the light into a gentle, diffuse glow, like a tiny sun seen through a thin layer of cloud. You lie in the stern of the boat, the folded tarpaulin beneath you, its canvas surface cool and slightly rough against your cheek where it peeks from under the blanket. Your head rests on the coil of rope, the hemp fibers yielding just enough to cradle your skull, their texture a familiar, scratchy comfort. The wool blanket covers you entirely, pulled up to your chin and tucked around your shoulders, its weight a steady, reassuring pressure that anchors you to the planks. The blanket's fibers are thick and coarse, and they trap a layer of warm air close to your skin, a small, private climate that smells of lanolin and old salt, and the faint, distant memory of a peat fire. Your hands are folded on your chest under the blanket, and you can feel the slow, steady rise and fall of your own breathing, a gentle, tidal motion that rocks you from within. The boat has stopped its slow rotation. You noticed the change some time ago. The way the bow no longer swung in its lazy, circular drift. The way the water's lap against the hulls softened from a rhythmic, liquid conversation to a barely audible whisper. Now the dory holds perfectly steady, as if the sea itself has fallen asleep, its surface a smooth, unbroken sheet of dark glass that offers no current, no swell, no motion of any kind. The stillness is so complete that when you shift your head on the rope pillow, the tiny rustling sound of your hair against the hemp seems unnaturally loud, a small, scratchy event in the vast, silent cathedral of the night. The boat does not rock. It does not sway. It simply rests, suspended in the fog, like a thought held in a quiet mind. You cannot see the water, but you can hear it, a sound so faint that it is less a noise and more a texture in the silence, a liquid whisper that breathes against the hull with the softness of a sleeping child's breath. The whisper comes and goes in long, slow cycles, now a barely audible hiss, now a silence so deep that you can hear the blood moving in your ears. When the whisper returns, it is so gentle that it might be the sound of the fog itself condensing on the wood, a million tiny droplets touching the planks with imperceptible fingers. You listen to this whisper for a long time, your ears attuned to its subtle, watery music, and it becomes a kind of lullaby, a soft, continuous hush that fills the night and empties your mind. The other sounds, the ones that have been your companions through the day and evening, have all faded away. The bellboy, which chimed its two low and high notes through the afternoon and into the dark, has fallen completely silent. You cannot remember when you last heard it, only that at some point the silver thread of its voice thinned and dissolved into the fog, leaving no trace. The gull, which cried its lonely three-note call, is long gone, perhaps roosting on some hidden rock far beyond the mist, its head tucked under its wing. The foghorn, which moaned its deep, resonant note across the miles, has not sounded in what feels like hours. Even the small, familiar sounds of the boat have quieted. The loose block on the mast, which tapped against the wood with its random sleepy rhythm, has stopped its tapping, held still by the dense, motionless air. The mast in its step, which creaked with every breath of the sea, now stands silent, its wood settled and at peace. The only sound left, besides the distant whisper of the water and the soft, steady hiss of the lantern's flame, is the faint creak of the boat's own bones, a quiet internal settling as the wooden planks adjust to the cold of the deep night. This creak is so subtle, so deep and low, that it seems to come from the very center of the wood, a sound of ancient, patient contraction, and it happens only occasionally, a single, slow groan that stretches out for a long moment and then fades into the stillness. Your breath mingles with the mist, a small cloud that forms just beyond your lips and rises to meet the fog that hovers above you, the two vapors blending seamlessly together. The air inside your blanket cocoon is warm and humid from your body, but the air outside is cool and damp, and when you exhale, the contrast creates a tiny fleeting plume that catches the lantern's muted glow and sparkles for a moment before vanishing. You watch this plume, your eyes half closed, and you feel the moisture from your breath settle back onto your face. A fine, cool mist that beads on your eyelashes and the fine hairs of your cheeks. Each exhale is a small, visible sign of life in the profound stillness, a quiet, rhythmic offering to the night, and you breathe in and out with the slow, steady pace of the sea's whisper. A deep tidal cycle that has no beginning and no end. The weight of the wool blanket is a constant comforting presence, its rough warmth pressing against your chin and your shoulders and your folded hands. You feel the individual fibers against your skin, each one a tiny, scratchy point of contact, and you draw the blanket a little higher, tucking it under your chin so that it covers your ears. The world outside the blanket becomes even more muffled, the whisper of the water receding to a faint, distant hum, the creak of the boat's bones, a low, barely perceptible vibration. Inside your cocoon, the sounds of your own body become the dominant notes, the slow, steady thud of your heart, a quiet drum counting out the peaceful hours, the soft, rhythmic rush of air through your nostrils, the tiny liquid click of your throat as you swallow. These sounds are intimate and grounding, a private, internal music that anchors you to your own existence in the midst of the vast, silent void. The boat's stillness is so profound that you have lost all sense of direction and distance. You cannot say which way the bow points, or how far you have drifted from the shore, or even if the shore still exists. These questions have no meaning here, in the deep heart of the night. The fog has erased every edge, every line, every point of reference, and what remains is a soft, featureless presence that holds you without boundaries. You are not lost, you are simply held, suspended in a place that has no coordinates, a space that exists only as a sensation of quiet and warmth and weight. The feeling is not one of being trapped, but of being cradled, as if the night itself has cupped its dark hands around the boat and is carrying you gently through a dreamless sleep. You feel the weight of the second blanket, the heavy wool one that you pulled over yourself from the bow, and you notice how its texture differs from the first. It is thicker, denser, with a tighter weave that holds the warmth more closely, and it smells faintly of the sea and of old, dry wood. The two blankets together form a warm, heavy shell that shields you from the damp air, and you feel your body slowly warming the space beneath them, your own heat radiating back from the wool and creating a small, snug pocket of comfort. Your toes, which had been slightly cold, now tingle with a gentle returning warmth, and you curl them inside your boots, a tiny, private movement that sends a wave of relaxation up through your legs. The lantern's flame continues its slow, steady pulse, a soft orange heartbeat that illuminates the inside of your blanket tent with a faint, golden glow. When you open your eyes, you see the weave of the wool above your face, the individual threads lit from behind, each one a dark line against the warm light, the gaps between them glowing like tiny, irregular windows. The light shifts slightly with the flame's invisible flicker, a slow, rhythmic brightening and dimming that is almost hypnotic, and you watch it through half-closed eyes, your mind drifting on its gentle, golden tide. The lantern's oil reservoir is still full enough, without checking, and the flame will burn steadily into the first grey light of dawn. This knowledge is a quiet reassurance, a small, practical anchor in the sea of stillness. Your heartbeat is a steady, regular presence, a quiet drum that counts out the peaceful hours with a slow, unwavering rhythm. You can feel it in your chest, a soft, insistent thump that presses gently against your folded hands, and you can hear it in your ears, a muffled, liquid sound that seems to come from somewhere deep inside your head. You focus on this sound, letting it fill your awareness, and it becomes a kind of meditation, a simple, repetitive mantra that soothes the mind and stills the last faint ripples of thought. The heartbeat is not fast or slow, not strong or weak. It is simply there, a constant, quiet companion, a sign that your body is alive and at rest, perfectly at peace in the deep stillness of the night. The cold of the night presses in from outside your cocoon, but it does not reach you. The blankets hold it at bay, and the lantern's small warmth adds a faint, golden comfort to the air just above your face. You feel the cold as a distant, abstract presence, a cool, damp weight that hovers beyond the wool, and you pull the blankets a little tighter, burrowing deeper into the warmth. The tarpaulin beneath you crinkles softly with the movement, a sound that is quickly swallowed by the fog, and then you are still again, your body heavy and relaxed, your breathing slow and deep. The fog outside the boat is a solid, velvety black, a darkness so complete that it has no texture, no depth, no shape. It is not the darkness of a room with walls, or the darkness of a moonless sky. It is a darkness that extends forever in all directions, a soft, featureless void that has swallowed the sea and the sky and everything in between. The lantern's muted glow pushes against this darkness, but cannot penetrate it. Instead, the light is absorbed and softened, turned into a hazy golden nimbus that clings to the boat like a gentle protective aura. You imagine the darkness beyond the light as a vast, calm ocean of ink, warm and still and perfectly safe, and you let yourself sink into this image, your mind floating on its dark, quiet surface. Time has become a meaningless concept. There are no minutes or hours here, only the slow, steady pulse of the flame, the whisper of the water, the creak of the wood, and the deep, even rhythm of your own breath. You have been lying here for what might be minutes or hours or days. You cannot tell, and you do not need to tell. The night is a single, unbroken moment, a long, peaceful, now that stretches from the lantern's first lighting to the distant, unseen dawn. You are held within this moment, suspended in its soft, dark embrace, and there is nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to be but this quiet, breathing presence in the bottom of a wooden boat. The boat's bones creak again, a slow, low groan that rises from the keel and travels up through the planks to where you lie. You feel the vibration in your back, a faint, deep hum that is more a touch than a sound, and you let it pass through you, a gentle reminder that the boat is old and wooden and alive in its own quiet way. The creak fades, and the silence returns, deeper than before, a silence so complete that it seems to have a substance, a soft, velvety weight that presses gently on your ears. You listen to this silence, and you find that it is not empty at all. It is full of a deep, peaceful hum that might be the sound of your own blood, or the sound of the sea's distant memory, or the sound of the sea's distant memory, or the sound of the night itself, breathing. It is a silence that soothes and calms, a silence that holds you like a lullaby. You let your eyes close fully, the golden glow of the lantern still playing on your eyelids, and you sink deeper into the warmth of the blankets. Your body feels heavy and distant, as if it belongs to someone else, someone who is very tired and very comfortable. Your mind, too, has grown heavy, its thoughts slowing to a gentle trickling stream of half-formed images and sensations. The rough wool against your chin, the cool air on your forehead, the steady thump of your heart, the soft liquid whisper of the water. These sensations blend together into a single, seamless experience of peace, a quiet, floating state that is not quite sleep and not quite waking, but a gentle, restful place in between. The lantern's flame continues its slow, orange pulse, a tiny, steady sun in the vast dark, and you are its sole planet, orbiting in a tight, warm circle of light. The fog holds you, the sea cradles you, and the night wraps around you like a soft, dark blanket, layer upon layer of quiet and stillness and peace. There is no bell, no gull, no horn, no tap, no creak, but the slow, deep settling of the wood. There is only the whisper of water, the warmth of wool, the steady beat of your heart, and the deep, perfect stillness of a world that has fallen completely, utterly asleep. A change comes so slowly that you do not notice it until it has already happened, the way a tide turns without a visible moment of reversal. You lie in the bottom of the boat, wrapped in your blankets, the lantern still pulsing its soft orange glow above your head, and for a long time the world remains exactly as it was, dark, still, silent. But somewhere in the deep hours before dawn, a subtle shift begins, a quiet transformation that seeps into the fog like water into sand. The black of the night, which had been so complete that it seemed to have no edges, begins to dilute, its absolute darkness thinning at the very top of your perception into something slightly lighter, a deep, muted charcoal that carries the faintest hint of form. It is not light yet, not even grey, but the quality of the dark has changed, losing its velvety impenetrability and becoming a little thinner, a little more transparent, as if the night is taking a slow, deep breath before releasing its hold. You become aware of this change through your closed eyelids, where the darkness behind them shifts from a uniform black to a softer, slightly reddish darkness that suggests the lantern's glow is now mingling with something else, some new, external luminescence that was not there before. You open your eyes and the first thing you see is the inside of your blanket tent, the wall fibers still backlit by the lantern's golden light, but the glow seems dimmer now, less intense, as if the flame has drawn back into itself. You push the blanket down from your face, and the cool air touches your cheeks with a gentle, damp caress, carrying a new freshness that was absent in the deep night. The lantern flame, which had been the brightest thing in the world, now looks yellower and smaller, its orange pulse subdued against a background that is no longer pure black, but a deep shadowy charcoal that holds the suggestion of shape and distance. The glass chimney, still filmed with moisture, catches the first faint hint of a silvery light coming from somewhere beyond the fog, a light so subtle that it might be a dream of dawn rather than dawn itself. You sit up slowly, the blanket slipping from your shoulders and pulling around your waist, the rough wool scratching gently against your neck. The movement stirs the air inside the boat, and the lantern sways slightly, its flame bending and straightening with a soft, liquid motion. You look around, and for the first time in many hours you can make out the shapes of your small world, the bow of the boat, a dark, curved silhouette against the charcoal fog, its peeling green paint now a deep, muted tone that holds no color. The oars lying along the benches, their white blades pale smudges in the dimness, their handles dark and straight, the coiled line on the stern seat, its loops a shadowy spiral that you can trace with your eyes. These shapes are still soft-edged, still half-swallowed by the mist, but they are there, returning to you slowly, like old friends emerging from a long, quiet dream. The fog, which had been a thick, solid blanket pressing close against the hull, now seems to thin by degrees, its density loosening, its edges becoming less defined. The charcoal dark is giving way to a soft dove grey that spreads through the mist like a slow, luminous blush, and within this grey you can see faint ghostly currents of lighter and darker air, the fog shifting and breathing as if it is slowly waking. The deep, velvety black that enclosed the boat is now just a memory, a dark band low on the horizon that is retreating with every slow breath. The air feels different too. It is colder than before, a clean, sharp cold that carries a new clarity, a crispness that was absent in the muffled warmth of the night. You shiver slightly, not from discomfort, but from the fresh, invigorating touch of the morning, and you pull the blanket back up over your shoulders, tucking it under your chin. You look over the side of the boat, and the water, which had been an invisible presence known only by its whisper, is now a sheet of deep dark slate, its surface smooth and glassy, reflecting the pale dove-grey sky with a faint silver sheen. You can see the reflection of the lantern on the water, a small, wavering point of gold that trembles with the boat's gentle motion, and you can see the reflection of your own silhouette, a dark, featureless shape leaning over the gunwale. The water is so still that the reflections are almost perfect, broken only by the occasional tiny ripple that spreads out from the hull and fades into the grey. You watch the ripples, and as you watch, the light continues its slow, silent transformation, the dove-grey lightening to a pale, luminous pearl that seems to glow from within the fog itself. The lantern's flame, still burning steadily, now looks smaller and more yellow, its golden light no longer the dominant illumination, but a warm, homely accent against the growing silver of the dawn. You reach up and turn the small brass knob that lowers the wick, and the flame shrinks to a tiny blue and yellow point. Then you lift the glass chimney and blow it out with a gentle breath, the smoke a thin, curling ribbon that rises and vanishes. The brass base of the lantern is warm to the touch, and you leave it hanging on its hook, its glass now clear and dark, the wick a thin, blackened cord that will wait for another night. The absence of the flame makes the boat feel different, more open, more connected to the world beyond, and the silver light of the coming dawn fills the space with a soft, even radiance that has no single source. You sit on the thwart, your back against the mast, and you watch the fog as it continues its slow, graceful thinning. The billows and folds of mist which were once so dense and heavy are now unraveling into long, gentle strands that pull apart and drift away, revealing glimpses of the sea beyond. A patch of calm, pale water appears off the port side, its surface a grey-green glass that catches the silver light and holds it in a smooth, liquid mirror. The patch widens, and you can see further now, perhaps 20 boat lengths, perhaps more, the water stretching out in a flat, serene plain that meets the retreating fog at a soft, blurred horizon. The fog still hangs in places, low banks of mist that cling to the water like a soft, white blanket reluctant to let go, but the gaps between them are growing, and the world is slowly reassembling itself from the grey. The air carries a new smell, one that you have not smelled since you left the shore, the faint, far-off scent of spruce and damp earth, a hint of the land somewhere beyond the mist. It comes to you on a light, cold breeze that stirs the surface of the water and brushes against your face, a clean, green smell that speaks of trees and soil and rock. You breathe deeply, and the scent fills your lungs, sharp and fresh, a welcome change from the salt and kelp and fish that have been your only companions. The smell is so faint that it might be a memory, but it is real, carried on the morning air from the hidden headlands and the dark, spruce-clad slopes that you know are somewhere to the west. You turn your head, trying to catch the direction, but the breeze is light and variable, and the scent comes and goes, a teasing, elusive promise of solid ground. The first bird calls, a single note repeated 3 times, a clear, liquid sound that cuts through the quiet with a gentle, insistent clarity. The notes are simple and pure, a descending trio that sounds like a question, and they hang in the air for a long moment before the silence returns, softer now, less absolute. You listen, your head tilted, and after a pause that you measure in slow heartbeats, the call comes again, the same 3 notes, patient and sleepy, a greeting to the slow-arriving day. The bird is somewhere in the fog, invisible but close, and its voice is a small, bright thread of sound that weaves through the grey and pulls the morning with it. You picture the bird in your mind, a small, dark shape on a hidden rock, its feathers ruffled against the cold, its beak open in a quiet, repetitive song. The call fades, and then, after another long pause, it comes once more, the 3 notes slightly fainter, as if the bird is moving away or settling back into its own rest. The light continues to grow, the silver of the fog now brightening to a pale, luminous white that holds a hint of lemon at its edges, where the sun must be climbing just below the horizon. The fog itself is no longer a solid mass, but a series of long drifting ribbons that pull apart and dissolve, revealing more and more of the sea. You can see the surface of the water stretching out in all directions, a calm, grey-green plain that is textured with the faint, parallel lines of a gentle swell, the waves so low and slow that they are almost imperceptible. The boat rocks with these swells, a slow, easy motion that is more pronounced now that the fog's muffling weight is lifted and you feel the rhythm in your body, a gentle lifting and settling that is like the breath of the sea itself. You look towards the east, where the light is strongest, and you see a broad band of pale lemon on the horizon, the first true color of the day. The lemon band is thin and bright, and it spreads along the edge of the world, its reflection on the water, a wavering golden path that stretches towards the boat but never quite reaches it. Above the lemon band, the sky is a soft, dove-grey that lightens to a pale blue at its highest point, and the few remaining shreds of fog are touched with a delicate, rosy glow that warms their edges. The dawn is arriving in quiet, stately stages, each moment bringing a new shade, a new shape, a new sound, and you sit in the midst of it, a silent witness to the slow, beautiful birth of the day. The boat's interior, which was so dark and indistinct, is now fully visible, every detail sharp and clear in the growing light. The coiled rope is a warm, golden brown, its fibers catching the lemon glow and holding it in a soft, nubbly texture. The creel basket slats are silver grey, their edges crisp, the gaps between them casting thin, regular shadows. The bait box is a dark, oil-stained cube, its brass hinge glinting with a tiny, bright spark. The oars resting on the benches are white and grey, their handles smooth and dark, their blades painted with a faded, peeling white that shows the wood grain beneath. The compass box is a small, neat square, its glass lid reflecting the pale sky, and the anchor chain in the bow is a dark, orderly coil, each link a perfect oval of rusted iron. All these things are ordinary, familiar, but in the new light they seem refreshed, renewed, as if they too have woken from the long, fog-bound night. You stand up slowly, the blanket falling from your shoulders onto the thwart, and you stretch your arms above your head, your muscles stiff from the long hours of stillness. The stretch feels good, a slow, gentle pull that travels from your shoulders down your back to your legs, and you hold it for a moment, your face turned towards the brightening east. The cold air is invigorating, and you breathe deeply, filling your lungs with the clean, sharp scent of morning. The boat rocks gently with your movement, and the water laps against the hull with a soft, liquid sound that is louder now, more distinct, no longer muffled by the fog. You look out at the sea, and you see that the fog is now just a few scattered remnants, low banks of white mist that cling to the water in the distance, their tops flat and smooth, their edges curling with the slow, invisible currents of the air. The lemon band on the horizon has brightened to a soft, warm gold, and the first direct rays of the sun break through a thin patch of cloud, a single slanting beam of pale, honey-colored light that touches the water and spreads into a wide, shimmering pool. The beam moves slowly, a gentle, sweeping arc, and it catches the last of the fog, turning it into a luminous golden veil that glows for a moment and then fades. The light is warm on your face, the first warmth you have felt in what seems like a very long time, and you close your eyes, letting it soak into your skin, a gentle golden blessing after the long grey night. The bird calls again, the same 3 notes, but this time they are answered by another bird. Further away, a fainter, higher echo of the same descending trio. The 2 voices weave together, a quiet, sleepy duet that fills the morning air with a sense of life and presence, and then they fall silent, leaving only the soft lap of water and the distant rhythmic wash of waves on some unseen shore. You open your eyes and look towards the west, where the fog is still thick, a low grey wall that hides the land. But you know the land is there, somewhere behind that wall, with its dark spruce and its damp earth and its quiet sleeping houses. The thought is not a pull or a call to action, it is simply a recognition, a quiet acknowledgement that the world is larger than this boat, and that soon, in its own time, you will return to it. For now, though, you sit back down on the thwart, the blanket pulled loosely over your shoulders, and you watch the slow, final unraveling of the dawn. The sun climbs higher, its light strengthening from gold to a clear, pale yellow, and the last of the fog dissolves into the brightening air, leaving only a few thin wisps that drift and vanish. The sea is a vast, empty plain of grey-green water, its surface ruffled by a light breeze that has begun to blow from the east, a cool, steady wind that carries the scent of salt and the distant, clean smell of open ocean. The boat drifts, its bow pointing now towards the land that is still hidden, and you let it drift, your hands resting on your knees, your breath slow and even, your heart quiet and calm. The long night is over, the fog is lifting, and you are exactly where you need to be, suspended in the silver, peaceful light of the slow-arriving morning. The fog does not lift all at once, but unravels in long, gentle strands that pull apart and drift away, the white curtain thinning to a luminous veil, then to a shimmer, then to nothing but clear, salt air. The sun, now fully risen, touches your face with a warmth that is welcome and soft, a quiet benediction after the long grey night. You sit with the blanket around your shoulders and watch the slow final dance of the mist as the last wisps dissolve, leaving the world open and calm. The sea stretches to the horizon in all directions, a grey-green plain under a pale blue sky, and somewhere to the west, a low headland of dark rock and a white lighthouse sits still and quiet, a known landmark returned. You do not reach for the oars. The boat continues its drift, and you close your eyes, letting the quiet rocking carry you into a restful, dreamless sleep.